modulating signal, it is not possible to do so. So in this case, the modulator is climate change, and the main signal is water source resource management. So let us start with water. What is water? Since I have science background, so I will start with its molecular structure. It's 2O. But water has a very peculiar bonding structure, and because of this peculiarity, this bonding has been given a separate name of hydrogen bond, because it is a bonding between hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen you can take as a sumo wrestler, and hydrogen you can take as a executive who is struggling with that sumo wrestler. So the electrons in this bonding structure most of the time will remain with oxygen, and therefore this delta minus polarity will emerge on oxygen atom and leaving with hydrogen a delta plus polarity, and that makes it a unique bonding structure, and it can grow to many such molecules of H2O, and therefore water naturally remains as a liquid. Hydrogen and oxygen have very different type of properties. Both are though diatomic molecules. Hydrogen being the lightest atom of periodic table, it is a bouncy molecule, and it immediately goes in the high strata of atmosphere. So we may not find many hydrogen molecules revolving around us, whereas oxygen is a heavier molecule, and therefore we can breathe with help of it. Hydrogen is highly flammable. The moment you take a matchstick, burning matchstick around a test tube of hydrogen, it catches fire, and oxygen, on the other hand, helps in burning. It does not burn itself, but it helps in burning. However, the molecule created by these two atoms is actually helping in extinguishing fire. So this is the peculiar structure of nature, and in that form we are seeing water chemical. As far as sources of water is concerned, we have on Earth, in this planet, we have 97% of source of water in form of oceans, which is saline water, and fresh water is only 3% available. Out of that 3% of fresh water, we have this distribution, that 68.7% of fresh water are encapsulated within ice caps and glaciers. 30% is in form of groundwater, and 3.3% as surface water, and the remaining 0.9% is some other form of water that we keep getting. Of that surface water, which we usually use for our day-to-day life and chores, 87% are in lakes, in rivers, and swamps. We get the remaining 13% of water. So now coming to climate. By definition, climate is a long-term average of weather conditions of a particular location or a wide geographical range also. And those parameters that cover the definition of weather are mostly temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, wind, precipitation, or rain. So typically, over a range of 30 years, the average out these weather conditions are converted or known or studied under climatic condition of that location or of that geographical region. So what do we understand by climate change in that sense? If you remember, there was a very beautiful movie that was released in 2006, which was actually uh, inspired by community talk of Al Gore, who was the presidential candidate at that time of USA, and who started this debate in the name of global warming. Later on, that global warming term was changed to climate change, because it is not only that it is global warming happening, it we might be seeing other repercussions of this global warming in context of climate. And therefore, it is more appropriate to name it climate change than to retain only for global warming. Basically, this global warming or climate change is caused because of the greenhouse gases. If you again recall the Industrial Revolution, its period has a vast range in historical perspective, starting from 1860s to 1850, maybe 100 years of period might be taken as an old industrial revolution. So, because of that industrial revolution and post-industrial revolution, when telegraph came, followed by telephone, then electricity, then even I acknowledge the two world wars also for the advancement of technology, science, and which resulted into the development or giving better features of our lifestyle. But because of this changing lifestyle or need of changing lifestyle, actually caused emission of greenhouse gases. Again, if you go back in history, you might remember that in our childhood days, there was a controversy, or there was a discussion or debate of CFC, CFC, chlorofluorocarbon, which is generated by these refrigeration units, and we were very much bothered about its effect on our environment or climate or surrounding. And so those type of greenhouse gases actually make an envelope in the atmosphere that traps some of the emissions which usually should have been radiated to the sky, cannot be radiated to the sky, and therefore it is trapped within the envelope of these greenhouse gases, and that causes rise in temperature of earth and its surrounding atmosphere. So basically climate change is particularly related with the temperature rise. If you go by the data, the main top 12 countries who are emitters of carbon dioxide, the major greenhouse gas. These are the countries with their numbers shown here on the screen. That China is way ahead, and China and US put together are actually far ahead of than any other and all the countries put together for producing these greenhouse gases. And this production of greenhouse gas, actually, if you see heat from these human-caused emissions is roughly equal to 400,000 atom bombs explosion happening each day all over the globe. And you can imagine the tremendous heat that is generated, and it is getting trapped. Therefore, we are actually as if sitting in an heat oven. The impact of that was studied over a period of years. What we found that if we take the average temperature in the of the period of 1980 as the base level, then around this period we are seeing 1.5 degrees Celsius rise in temperature. So 1.5 degrees Celsius looks very minuscule in our understanding, because we are used to live in 40-45 degrees Celsius temperature condition. So 1.5 degree change may not be appreciable by our human mind, but when you see it globally, when you see it in its habitat form, in its ecosystem form, then it is actually devastating and disastrous for us, for making this planet unlivable. So effects of this temperature rise, the first major effect is that it is going to reduce the ice cap and it will cause melting of icebergs. If it happens, then certainly that water will flow ultimately to ocean, and therefore the ocean level will rise. If ocean level will rise, then many of these seaside cities will drown, will submerge in water. And geographically, if you see, most of the most advanced cities are actually situated on the bank of river or on the bank of some water body. So if the level of this water body will increase, then most of these advanced cities will be seeing a threat of getting immersed in water. Many of the low-lying islands, particularly in South Asia region, uh, might be submerged inside water. Mangroves will vanish, and those mangroves who are actually inhabiting many species, living species, those will also go up, and that will directly impact the biodiversity. Homes and habitats will destroy by flooding because of this rise in water level, and that will cause loss of land, famine, drought. That will cause migration of population from one place to another place, and that will create many political issues, which we have been right now seeing once in a while, but that will become rampant globally. Melting of glaciers may cause floods. These floods will ultimately be giving rise to more cases of waterborne diseases. Precipitation pattern will change. So many things are going haywire. And you all have been reading it for years and giving this knowledge to our next generation also, that these all catastrophic effects are going to happen because of this climate change. So we have to be very, very proactive to address this. One of the major result would be less access to clean water or drinkable water. So again, coming back to water, if we are getting less and less clean water at the same time because of industrialization, population increase, pressure on agriculture, there are scarcity. So water level are depleting also, and we will get less and less clean water. So in these two boundaries, where are we? So I'm coming straight to the status of India, and by definition, it is said that if per capita annual water availability is less than 1700 meter cube, that region is called stress region. And if that goes down to below 1000 meter cube, then it is water scarcity. And a recent study published by WHO that reported that in India in 2001, we had on an average 1820 cubic meters of water available. So we were just above water resistance condition on an average. It is not of in 2011, which is past around a decade, we were 15.5 meter cube water available for us, and we were on an average underwater resistance condition. It is projected to go below 1300 meter cube in 2025, so not very far away from now. So we are extremely underwater stress condition, and by 2050 we are underwater scarcity condition. Many of the regions are much below the national average because these figures are average figures. So certainly many of the regions are below that, and so many of the regions are right now under water scarcity condition that we need to understand, and therefore water resource management should be taken up as a nation's mission critical. So, looking into this, the seriousness of this problem, the government of India, Niti Aayog, started some study. That study resulted into a composite water management index report in 2019, in 2018 and 2019, 2 years. And finding of, I will share with you some of the findings. However, I believe that many of you must have gone through these reports and CWMI indexing. But for general awareness, I must mention that 21 major cities, including all metro cities, are already touching zero groundwater level, affecting 100 million people. Not only that, 820 million people, India's population right now, if you consider 130 billion people, then more than 60% of that is which is living in 12 major river basin area are water stressed. And this is very, very strange that these are river basins. Still, these areas are water stressed areas affecting 820 million people. Water management directly impacts economic development, social fabric of the society, and developmental activities of a nation. So these all are going to be affected sooner or later in a very, very bad manner. It certainly impacts productivity of agriculture, industry, and service sectors because everything is water related. Is water. Even for industry, we have been reading many controversial water distribution pattern in India, and that led to many uprising and social movements in India, which we have been witnessing in recent past. This water management or water condition situation is because of expanding agriculture pressure, growing industrialization, aging population, improving living standard. So these all actually are guzzling water and asking for, demanding for more and more per capita water with a limited or declining availability. The CWMI 2.0 report that published in 2019 it shows that more than 50% of our states in India are already in high or extremely high water stress conditions. So these red hue shadows are actually for those states. Whereas these states which have more water body in the next coming slide, you will find that these states are not that much sensitive about water management, and they are slightly careless about managing water, and therefore they are facing two types of problems. One, they are also going under water stress condition very soon, and two, despite having water basins or river basins in these states are finding problem in drinkable water. So it is not that if you have ample of water resources in your state, it means you are going to cater to the public demand of clean water for drinking. You are also under threat. So it is a combined effort of all states in India to address this issue. That CWMI 2.0 has given the ranking of states in which Gujarat, as usual, has stood first. But the beauty of this ranking of state is 2-3 points very vividly, and that I want to be make very vivid here. That the range of the marks obtained by state it has a huge spectrum starting from 26 of Meghalaya to 75 of Gujarat. And more than 50% of Indian states are below 50%. So, as a professor, if I give a relative grading to these states, more than 50% states are actually getting C grade in water management processes which are right now in place, and that is not going to get you a good placement in that way. If I consider that because of these grading, you are going to get a recognition later on in your career. So that is a state that is warning, that is very, very alarming for us. Odisha is a state which declined substantially. Rajasthan, because of obvious reason, is a state which has improved substantially in these 2 years of this CWMI ranking, but still it has not come up to a level of top 5 states of India. And here, this point I wanted to highlight that the states which have water resources in abundance, such as Assam, Bihar, Goa, Jharkhand, Kerala, UP, Uttarakhand, are not sensitive for putting water management and policy in place, and they will regret later, and therefore these states should tighten their belt as soon as possible. So this report of CWMI 2.0 states that we are heading towards a growing national groundwater crisis. On the other hand, if you take example of Singapore, Singapore is a unique country which processes or treats all its wastewater and converts that into drinkable water, which at least at the current situation, we cannot even think of in India that we treat those seepage water for drinking purpose. But at the same time, India's water treatment capacity is only around 33%, which is not good. And more than 70% of states treat less than half of their wastewater. That is again a condition that should be looked into very, very carefully. In most of the states, what was found that through the regulatory framework of PIM stands for Participatory Irrigation Management, which is particularly to look into the irrigation, so agriculture sector in participatory in PPP mode, that is driven by or empowered by the government, but we take help of local bodies, NGOs, and farmers as end user to participate in managing those water which are made available for irrigation in those areas, and that is being done through a concept of WUA, Water User Associations. And Niti Aayog found that these two mechanisms or institutions are not working very effectively right now, and so our immediate corrective measure would be that we need to empower WUAs in respective areas. Many of the states have even not established or made any act related to these WUAs management, which is again not a good scenario. So suggested measures based on that report may be push market-based intervention. Unless we bring some interventions, some financial interventions in the process, it is not going to. It is not going to work that we keep everything on the shoulder of government and wait for till infinity, or will and accuse or blame always government for not managing these basic requirements. It is our responsibility. It is our responsibility. Government can only empower us. Government can only show us the road ahead. Government can only give us signal to work in some particular direction. But it is us who have to decide what way or what road we have to proceed. Implement robust PIM measures to ensure last mile utilization and adequate maintenance of irrigation assets. And and that is a big issue in current days management of irrigation system in India, and allow private players to develop infrastructure for rural drinking water access. We have to come out of the fold of government and institutionalize our own processes and infrastructure to do something in a participatory mode. And that is by and again it is being enforced in the process. Technologies have very important role to play here, and that is that in these days when everything is going to at least talk about artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, augmented reality, machine learning, deep learning, all these big terms. There is a lot of data available in for this vast population of country, and why not to capture all those data? Unless we have the reliable data, no model will work. So for making these models work for technological intervention to solve our problems, we need to have those reliable data, and for that we need to establish set up data centers in all parts of the nation, in every state, in every block, district, panchayat, wherever it is possible, in phased manner at least, so that technologists and researchers can come in, bringing their value addition and solve the problem for the society. And that is where our role comes. Give incentives to state governments to set up good governance of water management, or penalize government whatever way you think it is effective for not setting up an effective water management policy and processes. The standard practices that we all have been knowing are these, so I need not spend time on that. That government has anyway been doing on all these things, involving NGOs and public at large also. Because if it is not happening, or if it does not happen, then these are the pointers which will come as a nightmare very soon. Very soon, we are making our next generation deprive of many such facilities that we have been joyfully experiencing. So sensitization drive is the key of the hour, and which will save us from this catastrophic situation of water scarcity. And as in case of energy, in case of water also, we can say that water saved is water created. So government, the second term of Modi government has set up one Jal Shakti Yojana, Jal Shakti Abhiyan last year, which is a time-bound mission-mode water security and conservation initiative, which took up 1592 water stress blocks in 6 districts nationwide. And the beauty of this Abhiyan is that it takes care of, in advance, takes care of distribution of water, making available the drinking water, piped water at each village end. So that is the beauty of this Abhiyan, and that is I wanted to highlight here, that this is called the visionary approach for attending any national crisis, that by the time it becomes gangrene, you should be in a position to resolve that problem, address that, give proper treatment to that disease, and focus on water policy. Water policy was established in 2012. I don't remember, or 2007, but it is a toothless policy so far. But now many state government please remember that water is a state matter, and many state governments have been working day in, day out for making this policy stronger and for empowering public to work in that direction. And this is for rural areas, fight water availability is one of the key features of this Jal Shakti Abhiyan that I am very much appreciative of. But with that, the caution is that government alone cannot make effective changes. Please understand this. Uh, every individual, it is our duty. It is our duty to take a pledge of conserving water, to saving water, so that water can be used by next generation. Else the coming generations will face. I will give you one quick example here. When this pandemic situation came, and WHO released the guideline that you keep washing your hand very frequently, and that is the only panacea to was very worried about the availability of water of all these households and the energy consumption, because we need to run motors to lift the water on the overhead tank, and from there it comes from gravity to each and every house. So I was very worried that electric consumption will also rise because of this. But I am very happy to inform you that I am a very data sensitive person, that in this 5 months, I kept a watch on this data of energy consumption, and I found that it has gone down. Why has it gone down?
Professor Roy, just a second. Sir, you have 2 to 3 minutes to finish your presentation.
So I may request for 5 minutes, Shwetan.
Yes, sir. Please, sir. Please. Kindly continue.
2 plus 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. We have 2 more speakers.
I know. Sorry for mismanagement of time. So with this, I wanted to come to an exercise that think out of box, that can we create water, and that is the main thing on which I want to spend 5 more minutes. And this chart shows that in atmosphere we have 0.013% volume, or in percentage it is 0.001% of water that is absorbed in atmosphere, which is not utilized right now. So can we convert that atmospheric water, which is present in the form of vapor, into water, usable water? And there I want to bring your attention to. This is an image of, you can read it, that this is a dew water harvesting plant situated in Kothara of Kutch district of Gujarat, and I am one of the partners of this project, which was supported by DST, and the main thinker of this conceptualizer of this project is now not more. He passed away 5 years ago, late Mr. Gija Saran, who was colleague of mine and who was also involved with IIM Ahmedabad before joining the institute. So we actually created this dew water harvesting project in Kothara to establish that yes, we can create water by atmospheric moisture. So what is dew? Dew is a very clean form of water which has a pH range of 6 to 7.5, so neither acidic nor base, and it has TDS in range of 30 to 500 mg per liter. So it is quite drinkable in its natural form, but after some purification, it is certainly going to be or can be used as a drinking water. queue is created. It is created in a clear formation. So this is the radiative process of dew formation. Some radiation comes from the sky back to the earth. Some radiation goes back to the sky as emission from Earth's surface. Some scatters back to ground because of cloudy condition. So if you take it is simple Stephen Boltzmann equation. So if you take emission from condenser surface, it is given governed by this formula. If it is from sky, it is this, and therefore the balance cooling is of this order, which is up to 50 to 70 watt per meter square of surface, which is getting cooled in the night time. This,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Roy. I think we will have to manage the limited time.
okay. Okay.
Principal Secretary Haidar sir is on visit to the Narmada district today, so he cannot join the webinar. However, sir has conveyed his best wishes and special thanks to Professor Roy for the presentation. Now I will request Mr. Nitin Bassi to kindly address us. Mr. Bassi has been involved in the water sector since last 15 years and has a very thoroughly analyzed various aspects of water and climate change. He has published many papers in international reputed journal, and Mr. Bassi is associated with Institute of for Resource Analysis and